Greetings, friends of the Apocalypse. See, I'm getting that St. Patrick's Day thing in a little early.
Very nice.
Friends of the Apocalypse. This is Podcast at Ground Zero, your home for the Apocalypse, for episode 70, Dust. I am the Apocalypse Nerd, and he is Adam Bomb Glancy. Welcome to the Apocalypse.
Oh, indeed. Welcome to the Apocalypse, my lads. Are we going to have to talk like the Lucky Charms elf because it's the Apocalypse?
I think that'll last about 3 seconds, and then I'll get tired of it. So
yeah, I'm already tired of it.
Okay.
Do we have any decent Irish apocalypses?
You know what? That's a good question.
Yeah, there's at least one Irish zombie film that I remember that was about zombies. It's like a mad cow take.
Oh, that is... Oh, crap. Dead Meat? Is it Dead Meat?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is Dead Meat. I'll look it up while you get into the news of the day.
Yeah, so Dead Meat, yes. I think it's Dead Meat. I've seen it. It wasn't bad. So
yeah. I love how at the end people are being evacuated from the zombie outbreak in cattle trucks. That was a nice touch at the end.
Yeah, they did a good job with that. So this episode we're going to be talking about the third book in the Silo trilogy, Dust. So, but before we get into that, we definitely got some things we didn't talk about last time because I want to dedicate the time to our guest to talk about his game. So, things to talk about. One thing I wanted to mention was a couple of shows ago I mentioned a Kickstarter that I had gotten. It's really hard. I think I'm screaming because of these headphones, but hold on. Let me see if I could.
No, you're coming in nice and balanced.
Oh, I think I'm screaming because I can't hear myself. But all right, so I kind of rigged it a little bit. So now I look really stupid, but I can hear myself. But Maximum Apocalypse was the tile and card-based game that I got off of Kickstarter. I've gotten to read the rules, and I've gotten to play it at least once. I've been reading the forums a lot. I like the game. I do feel it definitely has a lot of potential. Okay. So it's definitely... let me fix this here. So I definitely think it has a lot of potential. I want to play it again. There's an expansion coming out for it. A Kickstarter starting like the 27th of March. I'll post it when it becomes live for more expansions, more apocalypses, more stuff. So it's a pretty good game. So I've enjoyed that. I played it only once, but I'm gonna do some solo stuff. When you come down, we're definitely gonna check that out. So other things that are in the news, things that are not apocalyptic but are relevant, as we all heard that Stephen Hawking died. It was today or yesterday?
It's today.
It was today. So we lost Stephen Hawking, 76, and he had a good run for the disease he had. Normally that disease kills people way, way earlier, you know?
Yeah. I want to say that he outlive his life expectancy by, what is it? Is it 25, 50? It was something big.
Yeah.
This is something that should have killed him 2 decades or more ago. And, which clearly means if he hadn't had it, he would have lived to be 190.
Yeah. He would have outlived us all. So we lost Stephen Hawking, and today is Pi Day. So, 3/14. So it's Pi Day. Celebrate by eating a pie or watching Pi, the excellent indie film by Darren Aronofsky.
Correctamundo. Yes.
So that's good one. Again, non-apocalyptic related. Oh, also deaths in the news is a couple of weeks ago. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, a month ago, we lost the author Victor Milan. Victor Milan was the true name of an author who's authored many post-apocalyptic books. He did the Guardian series under the name of Richard Austin. I don't know if you've read the Guardians, right? Or no?
No, actually, I have not. The Guardians is a title I recognized. for no other reason than when they were first published, they had really interesting cover art. They would almost universally show the team and whatever ride they had for banging around the apocalypse with. You know what I mean? It'd have their
usually like a Lav 150 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I remember. That stood out to me. But I actually haven't read the Guardians.
It wound up having 16 books after the fourth.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
The first, I always thought it was just supposed to be like not a trilogy. What would you call a 4 series of books? It's not a trilogy, a
quadrangle,
a quadrilogy. I always thought it was initially 4 books because it completed the whole. It had a story arc from first to the 4th book, but then they continued on afterwards. So. I liked the first 4. I thought it was pretty good. And he continued on to that. So he did the Guardian series under the name of Richard Austin. So folks, you should, if you haven't read that, and apparently a lot of people haven't, because I've been reading a lot of reviews, like people said on like iTunes and stuff, like, oh, I've discovered all these books that I never knew about. Thanks guys. So, I like bringing this to people's attention. So he also did another 3 books, a trilogy, I guess, Storm Rider series under the name of Robert Barron. He also did. I have not read those. They came out in 92, 93. So I've been trying to track them down, but I can't get a hold of them reasonable. So it's going to have to wait, Okay. He also, because James Axler was the in-house name for
yes, the
mostly Lawrence James, but then over time, other authors started writing the books. He wrote a handful of the Deathlands books as well.
Any of them you're familiar with that you recognize the titles?
No, they were all after I stopped reading.
Okay.
Like he started in the late 60s, numbers in the late 60s. By the 60s, I just couldn't read the series anymore. And some people say that it started to get better later on, like in the 100s. But the 60s, I couldn't read anymore. It was just getting too much. And I think a lot of the authors just killed the series because, as we discussed before, people would write something cool. The next person would not follow up on anything. So you had that problem of having too many authors.
Yeah.
So he wrote, he wrote like a couple in the 60s. Let me see here. I think he wrote some in the 60s, 70s, and I think even in the low 100s or something like that. So he wrote a few of those books. So we lost him about a month ago. So another post-apocalyptic author.
Isn't the Guardian set in a post-apocalyptic California where the state has separated on a seismic fault from the rest of the United States?
From what I remember, now mind you, I read this like in 85. There was nuclear war, and the president was somewhere not in Washington, and their mission was to get him back to Washington.
Okay. Then I guess I thought that was the Guardians, but all right. Cool. All right. And so that's what the first one was: is they go find the downed Air Force One or whatever, and then they okay, that's cool. That's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah, no, the Guardians it's not a bad series. So also, well, speaking of Lawrence James, one of the other, because he wrote a lot of other mini series of books, like he did Earthblood and Survival 2000.
Yes, I got that. Thank you, by the way.
Oh yeah, I did get those for you, didn't I? And before he started writing for Deathlands, which was in 86, so I think 84, 85, under the names of James Barton, he wrote a series of 4 books that only came out in England called Waste World. So there's 4 of them. Waste World. I've gotten 3 of them. So Waste World 1, Aftermath. Waste World 2, Resurrection. Waste World 3, Angels. And I think the last one's called My Way. So I've been able to get all these for just a couple bucks a piece. So it's not too bad. I haven't read them. I mean,
I'm looking forward to the one where Frank Sinatra is in the post-apocalyptic world. That'll be great.
And they're not too thick. They're not too bad. So again, another James Lawrence books. And then what else? Oh, just something I've been thinking about. Me and Scott were talking about this before. Is I'm sure some of our fans are familiar with deck building games, board games. Like there's a Clank, a very well known one. There's a Marvel, like a superhero one. There's Star Realms, Hero Realms. I like deck builders because there is a limited amount of skill involved with them because you got to build your decks as you're playing, and everybody has the same pool. So I was fantasizing about, how cool would it be for a good post-apocalyptic deck builder? And there is one out there, but I've heard read some reviews on it, and it's not that good. So I was like, how cool would it be if we could have a deck building game based on Gamma World? Like how cool would that be? So.
Well, certainly when you explain some of the history of people trying to get access to the Gamma World license back in the day, makes me think that you might be better off trying to get access to the Fallout license. They've licensed some games, but doesn't sound like Wizards or Hasbro is at all. It's like prying, a baby away from its mother.
Yeah, we've had friends on the show who told us a story about James Ward, how he tried to buy it back from them. They had nothing to do with it. My friend tried to buy it from them back in the 90s. It wanted nothing. He offered them for back then a decent amount of money for an IP that was essentially dead, But even in the 90s, they had this thing like, Hollywood's going to come through and offer us millions and millions and millions of dollars so they could license it to make a movie. That hasn't happened in the last 30 years, so.
Yes, well, I'm sure that the next D&D movie will be just as important and earth-shattering as the last D&D movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, the first one with, who was it? One of the Wayans brothers was in it.
Yes, there are some Wayans brothers in that one. Yeah.
So
wasn't exactly Lord of the Rings.
No, it wasn't. So anyway, that was just my fantasy. I actually daydreamed about that today, about making up a Gamma World deck building game. Like how cool that would be, because you basically player versus player, multiplayer. Playing your cards, building your decks. Fighting bosses like death machines, like that. How cool that would be. But we could talk about that more in another Gamma World show.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to fucking file the numbers off it. That's the ticket. Just file the IP elements off of it. It's not a death machine. It's a
machine of death.
Machine of death. Gaha! Yes, that sounds like yes. Correct.
So that's all I have. I said I had to get that out. I know. Sorry, folks, we haven't started the review yet, but we didn't talk about a lot of this stuff last time, so we wanted to get that out there. But I know, Scott, you had some. You were talking about some movies.
There's some other movies that have turned up. I try and keep my eyes open for any apocalyptic films that are on streaming services like Hulu or Amazon or Netflix. And right now, I'm not sure which is on which service at the moment, but Jared and I have both seen the film It Comes at Night, which is sort of a small indie film styled virus apocalypse. It's pretty good. It's actually pretty good in my opinion, but we'll get into it more later if we do a full show on it.
Yeah, it's less about the apocalypse and more about human human interaction and people, and like any good apocalyptic story, like how a lot of people I see are like so annoyed with The Walking Dead. That show sucks now, blah blah blah. It's like a drama. It's like, yeah, that's what the comic book was about. It was about the people and the characters. The zombie people don't realize, like the morons who watch it or don't realize that the zombies are just a set dressing. It's really not about the zombies.
Yeah. And well, speaking of zombies, there's the very effective Korean film, Train to Busan.
Classic.
And Train to Busan does some great zombie stuff, but does some great zombie stuff in a disarmed society, in a disarmed situation. There's at no point will anybody be turning up with a rifle to fix the problem. Really well done. They did some excellent things with running zombies, with fast zombies. Did some excellent things doing riffs on the ideas that zombies don't feel pain. Zombies don't care. Zombies will just soak up damage and not give a shit. They do some really good things with that. They also do some great things with the fact that zombies don't have much in the way of object permanence. So the film does a pretty good job with that. Does a great job with the idea of the problem unfolding. You are there. It's day one of the problem. It is. You are right on the front lines when it goes down, and it's more than just snakes on a plane with zombies. It's a really effective horror movie. I give it a thumbs up.
I really. You know who told me about that movie first? Believe it or not, my father-in-law, and he doesn't like stuff like that.
Interesting.
He likes classic, like there's a Criterion. There's like a Criterion channel now with movies, old movies and stuff. He likes he likes political stuff. He likes films with substance and stuff. He's like, oh, we saw this movie, Train to Busan. I'm like, really, Phil? I was like, shit. It's like, if my father-in-law liked this movie, it's got to be good,
The other movie I want to mention that's also available streaming, and I think it's on Netflix, is The Girl with All the Gifts.
Yes,
it's another British zombie film. Have you seen it yet, Jared?
I still have to see it, but it's on my queue.
Then the only thing I will say about it is that it's extremely ruthless. It's quite nasty. It's a fungus zombie apocalypse. For those of you who played the game, what was it, The Last of Us? Is that the one on PlayStation 4 that was the fungus apocalypse? You'll feel some connection to that, definitely.
So you're saying that Jane was close to being turned into a zombie?
Beg your pardon?
Jane?
Well, yes, I almost lost my wife to the fungal apocalypse. We went to this big nasty thing where she had a fungal infection in her nose and her sinuses that had to be taken out with surgery. I mean, I offered to get it out with a bullet, but everyone was like, "That's not necessary, Mr. Glancy. She's not a zombie." I'm like, "But we're close, right? She could be a zombie." No, Mr. Glancy. Why don't you wait in the lobby? So, regardless, she was saved from the fungal apocalypse. Otherwise, that fucking thing was gonna grow out the top of her head. It literally was causing headaches, which is bad if it's causing headaches. But the last thing I want to mention is that there's a made for Hulu show coming up. Looks like it was made in England, called Hard, Herd Sun. And the basic premise is that the government, or whoever, I think it's the government, has figured out that we have figured out that global warming is actually happening, but it's being caused in a change in the sun. And it's just going to keep getting worse until we're all dead in 5 years. And there is nothing we can do about it. There's no changing your consumption. There's no having fewer carbon emissions. There's nothing. We're just dead.
So what is like the corona of the sun expanding or something, or
something like that? It's something along those. It basically means it's an extinction level event. Everything except life in the Marianas Trench is going to be dead. And unless you're one of those chemosynthesis crabs and tube worms that hang out near the vents at the bottom of the ocean, you're gone. And the first episodes look like they're all about sort of like finding out that this is happening and then sort of making a decision about what do you do? Do you tell everyone? And what good would it do to tell everyone? I mean, you tell everyone, and I'm thinking it's like there's going to be some folks who are going to be like, well, now is the time to settle all of our grudges, since I won't get a chance 6 years from now. It's going to be, all on a total race to be able to say you were the last man standing.
And when is this starting?
Let's take a look here. Looks like it is now. I think I'm seeing that it's now available on Hulu right now.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting because if it's a 5-year countdown to human extinction, if they get 5 seasons out of it, I'll be very impressed. If the last episode is just, that's it for Earth, I will be very impressed with that. If they can pull that off.
Also, there's the one coming out on Netflix, The Rain.
Oh, tell us about The Rain. I don't know. I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, you did. You didn't see it? No, I think it's like I want to say it's a Swedish.
Good. It's foreign.
It's like a foreign film, but it's going to be on Netflix. It's apparently there was some kind of. I don't know much about it yet because I didn't look into super detail yet. But it's like apparently it's an apocalypse, that there's some disease or something in the rain that could kill you or turn you into some kind of monster. So everybody has to stay dry. You can't get wet because if you get wet, it's because it's in the liquid on the planet.
It's in the water supply. So
yeah,
unless you boil your water, okay.
Yeah, but if you get rained on, fall in some water, it could turn you into some kind of monsters. So it looks like it could be interesting. The Rain. I posted about it on the blog with a link to at least the
yes, you did.
The trailer. So we have The Rain coming out. And then there's some movies coming out. We talked about that one, the one with the there's no cure for but they cure zombies, but they really don't.
Oh yeah. It's it's the one where it's Cured. You're right. That's Cured. The name of the film is Cured. Where everyone who's been cured is now looked at sideways because last year they're trying to eat your face, and so no one trusts them anymore.
So that's coming out, and then also next month in the theaters is A Quiet Place.
Yes, A Quiet Place, which appears to be some sort of alien apocalypse, but it's an apocalypse nonetheless, so it counts.
Apocalypses are good. So. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's speaking of apocalypses, hey, let's talk about dust.
Let's talk about our nano apocalypse, I guess.
Is that a spoiler?
Yeah, if they didn't figure out the nano thing, that's their problem.
Yeah, that's the thing with this. Folks, we're going to start reviewing. Spoiler alert. We're going to try, as usual, we're not going to try not to spoil too much, which is hard. To review the book. I mean, we could talk, we could wax poetic about, his grammar style and this and that, but unless you talk about stuff that happens in the book, it's really hard to convey to you plot and how the book is. So just be warned, there's going to be some spoilers. We will try to keep it reined in so it won't be too bad. So now, spoiler alert, folks. So we're going to try to keep it to a minimum. So Dust is the third book in the Silo series by Hugh Howey.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a third book in the series. Now
we have talked about Wool and Shift.
Yes.
And this is the culmination of that series.
Yes. So first up, I guess impressions. Did you like it? Did you like it better than the others? Did you think it was worse than the others?
The thing is the very first. It's difficult to think about it without thinking of it in terms of the first book. And the first book is an expansion of a short story, which is that first chapter about the first sheriff. That's clearly a standalone short story. And this thing kept building from there. For the most part, I didn't run into anything that felt like it was crammed on in a strange way. Like you said, when you were looking at it, why are the levels so big? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, wait, now they've explained why each level is so tall, how much space there is between levels. Suddenly that made sense. But so it holds together consistently like that. So it doesn't feel cobbled together like he was making it up and changing the rules of his apocalypse as he went along.
No, because like you said, he explained a lot of these things that I questioned in the first book. In the second book, is like, oh, okay, that's why. Oh, okay, that's why.
They certainly there is something hopeful about sort of hopeful and but also kind of nasty in Wool. It's quite a nasty book. I mean, they're not gentle with any of the characters in it. And Silo, or rather Shift, is incredibly grim, and sort of, in a lot of ways kind of hopeless and desperate and nasty. And it's weird to be, you're getting a story from the perspective of somebody who is, if he wasn't so completely medicated all the time, might be suicidal. In fact, is almost nearly suicidal at multiple points in the story. But this third book finds a way to, again, just abuse the reader by dashing your hopes over and over again.
They tease you, so like, oh, cool, this is gonna go. Oh no, it's not. There were so many times where like they build you up and then they just knock the chair out from under you. So many times in this book.
They did. They were not kidding about that. There are people who show up who, oh, look, this is someone who appears to have some integrity and some curiosity and some spark of humanity left in them. Don't get attached to that guy. Okay. Yeah. Anyone and then there are people who were scumbags in book 2 who you realize there was something more going on than them just being a selfish scumbag, and you didn't see that coming. That sort of flushed out and it sort of came to fruition in the third book, Dust. But I guess it's really tough to sort of talk about this apocalypse because so much of this apocalypse is not out of control. I mean, I think of apocalypses and post-apocalyptic fiction as about a breakdown of the system, a breakdown of control. This is a completely measured recipe for an apocalypse where every factor is attempted to be controlled for in a way that makes it worse.
And that's part of the problem, because there's a point where it does affect, that itself affects some people because they measured and tried to make things a certain, like that started affecting some people, like, what have we done kind of thing. So
this I don't know if I call it is it a managed, it's a managed apocalypse, I guess.
Well, as they said as you saw in the other two books, this, like, I'll get to that in a second, they hint in the other books about why they did it, and it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah. So how can you have this giant survival complex if nobody knew the apocalypse was coming? And if you knew how could you know the apocalypse is coming unless you were going to launch it?
Yeah, they were being preemptive. So, but that aside, this book, my impression, I did enjoy it along the line with all of the. I'm still on your camp. I think the first book really set this bar of this awesome apocalypse. Not to saying that the other books aren't as good, but I still think that the first one's still probably the best. I probably like this second best, and the second one the third.
That middle book is a real middle book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. They needed to bridge that gap, because part of what they did in the second book was explain why, as we talked about. This book is like, okay, now you know why, and here's what's going down. So I think it was written just as well as any of the other books. I said a lot, they introduced some new characters, a lot of new stuff going on. He continued to put new tensions into this book. You thought, okay, well, yeah, they know about this, or they've done this, or they found the other silo, or they've done. No, he keeps on bringing new things to create more tensions, bringing back other characters, introducing new characters into the book. because where I think where we left off in the second book, we'll talk about that just, I guess, a little bit, is, and I think in the second book, the main protagonist went to another silo and came back,
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, they've lived in such an isolated world that everybody thinks that it's all like not true. It's fantasy. Oh, you're a crazy person.
There's only one silo. How could there be another silo? A silo with the exact same floor layout, in which were survivors of a failed silo. And one of the things I wanted to point out, there's a small point. I mean, the second book is not only about how it happened or why it happened, but it also gives you a look at the idea that there is a control of the silo system. And you certainly learn that in the first book, and you actually get to look inside. What's it like inside the control silo? The one
silo one, the main silo.
The one that manages and maintains the other silos. And more importantly, destroys silos that looks like they're about to fail or go off the rails. They
expected failure. That's why they built so many, because they knew there was going to be failures.
Yeah.
And then they also knew that there could be, if some people were on the brink of gaining knowledge or getting out or finding or discovering or causing a problem by contacting other silos, they would crush them, They
could destroy a silo and kill everyone in it. And what was fascinating was in the third book is that, about this whole idea of this managed pockets. At some point, they start to realize some of the silos they thought they destroyed for rebellion might not be destroyed. That those silos, and you never go see those silos. You never get a look at the silos that went dark. But they're thinking that some of the silos may have just ripped out the
controls.
The controls and the surveillance gear and just gone dark. And then, there's a society out there who are charting their own future completely separate from the protagonist. I wasn't sure that anyone was going to survive.
I did some reading.
I thought that what was going to happen is your only hope in the story was that one of those dark silos survived, and that you were going to lose every protagonist you saw in Dust.
Well, I did some reading on, I think, on Howie's pages, and people were asking questions because they were confused, and he answers them. And I'm not going to answer these questions, but he answers some questions about some of these dark silos, and you'd be surprised with some of the answers he gave. So, it's I would be interested to see further books about maybe some of the other silos. What else? Because we can't. We really
don't want to give anything away. I mean, one of the best sort of reveals on this story is, all the silos are supposed to be down there until the surface of the earth is okay to live on, right? But what do we learn about the apocalypse? And we learned that in the second novel. The apocalypse is called by nanite weapons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Weapons that you don't see, their presence is hard to detect until they go to work killing you. And you could be walking around with them in your system and never know it until they kill you.
And they explain a lot about, the world outside, how everything's dark and gray, and why things and they explain how the nanites are there. And they explain also, I don't know if they explained it in the book, but the one silo that survived an apocalypse, I don't remember if they explained it in the book or it was him explaining his website, like how Solo and the kids in the other silo survived. He explains that, they survived because of because you'd be wondering, like, how the fuck did they survive all by themselves for all those years with nothing? You know what I mean? So,
well, next to nothing. They did have the supplies in the overseers,
but the silo was open.
Yeah.
Oh, spoiler. But anyway, so he explains why that happened. So, definitely in this book, it's the culminate. You don't. There's no going into the past like this book was, but I think there's equal portions of Silo 1, the control silo, and the other two. Well, you're dealing with two silos at this point in the book.
Yeah.
I think it equally goes back and forth between the two and all the crap that's going on there. And, because there's like people in the main silo who are having, like I said, these moral conflicts of what's going on or not being able to deal with what's going on, and explaining, what he doesn't explain it there was something that was happening to one of the main characters that he doesn't explain in the book. You could theorize it, but again, his website, after you've read the book, read that. It explains, oh, that's why this happened, but not this happened. He left some gaps with the characters.
I don't mind when stuff happens that characters are never going to know because it's outside of their ability to know it. That's fine.
But I find it interesting to at least get an answer. Like, I was reading these things like, oh, I was wondering about this. Oh, I was wondering about this. So I don't mind. I didn't need the answers. I just happened to come across them, and it was nice to do that. But this book is definitely, it's the culmination of everything that's been going on in the last two books, because you're building up like, here's what's going on to the people in the one silo, and this how they change everything, by not cleaning. And then here's what's going on in silo 1 and what happens when somebody doesn't follow the plan that's in place, and how those two worlds come together to create this conflict, and you get to find out more. But this whole book is culminating on all of that, like, because as we know, we talked about, they discover another silo and equipment to try to contact the other silo. Like the main protagonist is trying to prove to her whole silo that they exist. Nobody believes her, so that's interesting to see how all that develops, and then how they try to stop. And like, there's a lot of like a chess game going on a lot in this book, like with the characters in the survival silos, the main silo. It's like a chess game, they're trying to like do certain things, but hide their moves and try to think a couple moves ahead,
Yeah, because again, silo 1 essentially has a big red death button with the number of the silo they want to erase on it. And if they feel like it's getting out of hand, they can pull the plug. And the thing is, that's worth noting about this is that there is a reason why they want the silos to progress in isolation from each other for this period of time. And the period of time, I guess I'm going to give away something here, but the period of time that they keeping them in isolation and studying each silo isn't really related to the length of the apocalypse.
Mm-mm.
They have another agenda. It is not merely about when it's safe to go outside. They are playing a different game. And that is one of the reveal of what that game is one of the big reveals of the second novel, and sort of even a culmination of this novel.
And also, like you said, why they're waiting so long, there is an expiration. There is an expiration date.
Yes.
On all these silos. There's things that are discovered by the characters. Not from they didn't hear anything from silo 1, but just from their own research, going, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there's only. Well, you figure, okay, just to speak in vagaries, if you're in a silo and, you've built it to be able to manufacture, food, recycle water, maybe get some fuel and oil, like wherever, depending where you built it. But there's going to be certain things that you're not going to be able to create or use. And you can only stockpile so much stuff. Yeah. So there is an expiration date on how long you could be in that place.
Yes. Yes, there's only so much recycling. There's so much supplies. There's only so much new resources that can be extracted before these things will fail or run out.
And it's all been predetermined. It's not like, well, we'll stuff it to the gills until things run out. It's it was built with a purpose of it's going to last X amount of years. Well, what about the population? Well, they've accounted for that. They've accounted for everything. This is a very controlled environment.
Yeah,
it is
a controlled apocalypse and a controlled post-apocalypse.
Well, I mean, the environments that the silos are in now after the apocalypse. Well, the apocalypse is definitely controlled, but the silos are definitely controlled environments. Like everything has been planned to a T.
Right down to the way that they've even planned for uprisings.
Yep.
You know, and the cycle of uprisings over the, you know, the time over the life of the silo. It's not like they were like, we have to stop uprisings from happening. It's more like
when they're going to happen.
We're going to have uprisings, and how do we move through the cycle of uprising and move on to the new state of affairs, the new normal? You know,
well,
after an uprising.
And part of it too is they need to get away from the apocalypse, because it wasn't in this book. I think it was in the second book. With Jimmy? They talk about there's some old lady there that like had
the teacher
who had memories of how things were before because she heard it from somebody who was old as she was when she was a little kid. So it's purposeful to try to get far away in time from the event to make it to where people don't know anything else. And how everything's a fantasy, because it's getting to that point in the novels because people are like, oh, all these things in children's book, it's just fantasy, like green grass, blue skies, animals, clouds, So, but there's a lot of big,
and also to completely extinguish the previous culture. That is to say, the culture of the United States of America in the 21st century they have to be so far away from that they've exterminated that culture and created the culture of the silos to replace it. Which in some ways is a hard caste system, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, you have the people from the upper level, the lowers, the mids.
Yep. And the jobs that are very much the matter of family. Farmers end up being farmers, and porters end up being porters.
Porters, IT, engineers, it's all, it's definitely a caste system. So this book, again, it's a culmination of, like I said, time's running out too for our protagonists, in the silo and in the master silo, because, some time limits have been put on to them, in the story. So they have to get certain things done in a certain period of time. So I don't know. I don't want to reveal too much about the story. It's like, well, they're trying to connect the silos and so forth. But then there's a lot of things they discover throughout the book. When it's
a stupendously plot-driven story, even though there's a lot of character involved, and some of the plot is driven by the characters' faults, their imagined fears, things that they're upset about that aren't real, which is brutal. Yeah. Having characters react to what they think the problem is, and they're dead wrong, and they're
completely
making it worse.
Oh, even our protagonist has preconceived notions of what things are completely wrong. And if that person would have been on board, and if our protagonist would have been a little bit more on board, a little more trusting, things could have turned out maybe a little bit better. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but yeah, it's a very plot-driven story. I don't think we're railroaded.
I'm just saying revealing too much about the plot is difficult, because the plot is what really, for me, makes these novels. The reveals of what's going on, what the depth of the mystery is. Revealing too much about that, just
Oh, we can't spoil that, because again, key points of the plot are key things in the story, which, like, there's a lot of aha moments in these books, especially this one. You get a lot of aha moments, because there's a lot of good stuff going there. And one thing that got worked into this book that a lot of people, I saw some people bitching about because they said it was kind of superfluous, was religion got brought into this a lot more than any other novel.
You might be right. I think you're right. There was yes. I don't really remember religion in the silos until
they talked about it, the Sunday services, but it really came out in this book, especially when things started going a little pear-shaped. All of a sudden, the religious people were religious nutbags, like totally like crazy people, or maybe just that sect of them. But all of a sudden, religion became pretty, not predominant, but it was stand out and noticeable, whereas you didn't really notice it before.
Yeah.
And there was some creepy stuff about them too, which
I did like the line. Was it you guys seem pretty quick about weddings? How are you on funerals?
Yeah.
But yeah, the author took an opportunity to slag religion while he was about his business. I don't know what it was, something in particular had come up that necessitated bringing religion to the forefront of the story or not, but they don't exactly cover themselves in glory during their appearance.
No, and some of the thing I read, he was talking about, so somebody brought that up. He was talking, I guess, about a lot of it was dealing with, salvation, damnation. He covered, bringing that in, covered that. It's like, well, you could sit here and die thinking about you'll have, it was definitely about, that, this whole salvation, damnation. What do? Do you sit there and do nothing? Do you try to do something else? It brought that kind of subject into it. So it was, it seemed a little, I felt it didn't quite fit in. Like it felt like to me like it was kind of forced in, but maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. If you would have left that part of it out, I don't think we would have missed it at all, to be honest with you. So, but anyway, I really don't want to talk too much more about the story and the plot, because I think now that we've been talking about it, it's all swimming in my head now, all coming back to me, and there's just so much going on, and there's so much discovery.
We're still going to give it the thumbs up. It's the writing is more complex than a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff. It's almost it's on the edge of getting into Cormac McCarthy country with like The Road. It's almost anti-gun porn. There's guns. There's some shootouts, no problem. But nobody gives a shit about the manufacturer or its rate of fire or, none of that. It's all character and plot driven.
It's not like these
books? I was about to say. There's no gun porn. There is...
because they're not important to the story, really.
Yeah. And some of the technology is a little hand-wavy, like the nanite technology that's now used in the 21st century before nanites are weaponized to become the problem that this system was designed as the solution for. They're used for everything. They're used for medical technology to an extent that's super creepy. And that comes back in the third novel too.
Oh yeah, well, the nanotechnology makes it what they've done possible. If it wasn't, besides being instrumental in the apocalypse that's in this story, it also makes it to where they can do it. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, we have the technology to do this, but then we also need this technology to lift. They need the technology to bring on the apocalypse, but they also need that technology to survive the apocalypse.
Yeah, you can't have shifts without the nanites.
Nope.
Which I think was one of my absolute favorite solutions to the whole, I'm going to say it, the whole cryogenics problem. They finally came up with a good answer that I was willing to believe to suspend my disbelief about cryogenics.
Yeah, because as we all know, cryogenics doesn't work.
Yeah,
so
turns you into a pile of mush as every one of your cells is ruptured by ice crystals. So the nanite technology really made that.
It solved the problem.
Yeah, Yeah, it really did. It allowed me to suspend my disbelief really easily for that.
Yeah, and the suspension of disbelief was not a huge leap of faith, you know. So which is good. It's not like, oh yeah, right, transporter beams and warp drive. This is kind of like, well, in 50, 100 years, I could kind of see this. It's believable.
Yeah,
I think.
The other thing that is really worthwhile in this story is the idea that starts up in Shift that you are who they tell you you are. This thing shows up in the stories where characters, as far as Silo 1 goes, are their job.
Yeah.
That was super creepy, the way that people would step into the duties of the person who had that job before them and be molded to this character of the duty station. You know what I mean? It's I don't want to give anything away. It's too much away, but it was super creepy the way they made that work. It was a excellent use of that kind of, it was sort of almost a riff on Aldous Huxley's Soma from his Brave New World stories, the drug that keeps everybody in society in line.
Now you're referring to Silo 1 or
Silo 1.
Oh yeah. Oh no, yeah. Though
you'd come on for your shift and you'd do your shift, and you are essentially, as you are uncryogenicized, you are essentially who they tell you you are. You are presented with a file and a name card and everything else.
And people fall into line because they use chemicals to keep people thinking what they should be thinking, and if you don't think what you should be thinking, you're a problem, and you're going to go to the deep freeze.
Yeah. And the people who come out of freeze to go work their shift, work in Silo 1 for however whatever it is. The idea that there's a really interesting way that their people's wills and personalities are subsumed to the mission. Yeah. And as bad as it is, living through that slow time machine, going forward in a silo.
But also they don't want them to think past the mission that they're supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to be
in front of you. Right in front of you.
I'm supposed to be a tech. I fix this for 6 months. That's all I need to know. And they don't know more than that, because if people knew more than they were supposed to know, that's a problem in these books.
Yeah, and
it became a problem.
They do a great job demonstrating the idea. At some point, you realize that the whole diabolical, fucked up, and ultimately at its core insane plan could be limited to like 5 people max who really knew the details, maybe at most.
I don't even think it was that many.
Yeah,
there was at least 2 minimum.
Yeah. Oh, and the daughter, 3. So this idea that everyone thinks they're on, this brave new world, we're gonna forge our way to a new future. You know what Shift reminds me of in a lot of ways, with the people going on and off shifts so that they will be able to cryo their way into the future, where you're just unfrozen, you work on the silo, you go back down, and then that reminds me. It reminds me of Herman Mudgett, H.H. Holmes, the guy with the murder house in Chicago at the turn of the 19th century, the guy who had the hotel where the rooms would have gas outlets that you could control from the basement to gas the people in the room, and then had trap doors you could throw bodies into the basement, and there was a furnace in the basement for burning bodies. And he had this whole murder hotel with secret passages where you could get into the women's rooms at night and kill them, or just gas them or whatever. And the question was, they'd lock their door, right? And so he'd gas the room, and then he'd come in through a secret entrance to load the body and drop it down down a chute into the basement. He built all this by constantly hiring and firing contractors, so nobody knew what the job was. They'd work some of it for a couple of days or weeks, and then he'd fire everybody and hire somebody else. And he was big on hiring immigrants, who didn't speak the best English, and then kick them out. after a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. So nobody got the big picture. Nobody understood that what they were building was a house or a building designed to kill people and dispose of their bodies, right? He's a very infamous serial killer. There's a novel called The Devil in the White City, which is about him doing his murders at the time the Chicago World's Fair was happening.
I could see that parallel because, you know, people aren't building it, but people are working in it to maintain it and keep it going without knowing what they're doing, really. They don't know the big picture at all.
Nobody can see it because they're being cycled, because they're being brought in and brought out so quickly. Nobody's seeing the picture. So that's what that mechanic reminded me a lot of H.H. Holmes's Murder Castle in Chicago.
And a lot of suppression helps too. So but overall, if you've gotten through the first two books, you definitely want to read the last book because I think it's just as good as the other books.
As long as you don't mind the carpet getting jerked out from under you at least 3 or 4 times, because oh boy, it's not a smooth resolution.
I also, at the very ending of the book, I feel like I wanted a little more. Like, you know, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know, well, what are they going to, like, I almost feel like I need another book because it's like, well, what happens to the characters? And why didn't they try to do A, B, and C? They have the ability to do A, B, and C. Why didn't they do that? You know? So I felt a little empty at the end, you know? Like not empty, but I was left wanting more. More things to do, more answers.
That's the best sign of a successful story. You know,
yes.
If you get to the end of it after 3 big, thick, nasty books, and your thought is, well, okay, that's fine, but what else have you done for me lately? Where's my, you know? Then I'd say he hit the target.
He did his job. They're good books, and if you. Well, hopefully you aren't listening to this and not read the other books or listen to the other 2 shows, but people might be. Get them and read them. Like I said, it's a more contemporary as in it was written in, when did he put the first book, 2011, 12?
I think so.
Something like that. And I say it's contemporary, even though it was 5-6 years ago, but it's contemporary for us because we usually talk about books that are like 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. So, you know, or stuff we read when we were like teenagers. So, for us to hit something that's within this century, within the last decade, that's contemporary. That's a good job for us, and it's good. It's worth it. It's totally it's worth purchasing, checking out the library, whatever the case may be. You know,
yeah, absolutely,
definitely read them. I think it was a good conclusion to the stories, and I hope one day he gives us a little more. That's what I hope for.
Yeah, and. Yeah, absolutely spectacular stuff. I was very happy with it.
Yeah, I was I didn't read it, but I listened to it every chance I got. And every time I'm like listening, like I made sure I was listening to it when I wasn't multitasking because I really was absorbed in the book, you know, especially because where I live now, like a lot of times I got to drive to do stuff. I might have a 20-minute drive to go do something. I put it on while I'm driving, so I have no other distractions, but I'm just driving from A to B. So all I'm doing is I'm not like on the computer. I'm not doing anything. I'm just driving and listening, you know? So I was, again, I was always riveted when I was listening to the story. As I always wondered, like, what's going to happen next? Like, oh shit, that happened. What are they going to do now? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely held my attention all the way down the line. And I just don't, there were some slow spots in Shift.
Yeah.
There were some dreamlike spots in it, but I think a lot of that was just trying to get you into the mindset of what it's like in Silo 1. But this one didn't have this. This one barreled forward pretty fast, you know, and relentless until it brought it to a final conclusion.
So out of 5 mushroom clouds, what would you give it?
I'm going to give it overall, I'd give the series
at least a 4.
4.5, 4.6. You know, only because it's the problem with trilogies is middle books are always a problem in trilogies.
They got to bridge that gap between the first and the last novel, obviously.
But all in all, it is one of the best things I've read in a while. It is perhaps not quite the level of literature of The Road. It is not as pulpy as The Postman or Eternity Road, but it's really good.
No, and we're not saying those things make good post-apocalyptic books. Like, you have to be like them. So I like that this was a little bit different. I like the story. I would give it overall. I would overall give it at least. I would probably, it's not perfect book by any means. I wouldn't give it a 5, but I'd give it at least. I would give it at least 4.5 mushroom clouds out of 5. Okay. Overall, and again, highly recommended. Really, I really enjoyed it. It's worth checking out. Again, maybe one day we'll get maybe a new trilogy out of it. Because. He calls it the Silo series. It's a trilogy, so hopefully maybe he'll start another, the Outside trilogy, whatever he calls it. I don't know.
There are other silos, and one of the factors that is involved in the project, this managed project, is
what happens to them.
Yeah, there was a whole thing where there weren't supposed. I can't even say it. There's a huge factor about how many silos are supposed to be released at the end of the project, and that factor is no longer going to be controlled for by the end of the story. So it could go. There could be all kinds of stories that result from that. So
everything by the end of the book, everything is off the ranch.
Yeah,
everything's. It is open to interpretation now. So all right, we're gonna shut up about the book. I don't want to talk about it anymore because we're gonna reveal. I don't want to reveal anymore.
We're reveal something. We're just gonna fucking reveal something because it's got good plotting and good ideas, and I kind of want to go, ooh, this is a good idea. Ooh, wasn't this imaginative? But all that does is that just takes the joy out of it for the rest of you.
Yeah, so you got to discover it for yourself, folks. So that's it, folks. That was Dust. Again, highly recommended by us to read it. If you haven't read the whole series, get them all, read them all. If you're a fan of post-apocalypse and you have not read those yet, get them, read them. So
it's also one of the best things I've ever read about the whole idea of a enclosed community.
Yes,
the standard survival bunker story, the domed city of whether it's Logan's Run or the Down Under from Boy and His Dog or whatever. This really was somebody who took a lot of time to think about what are the real implications of one of these structures.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really well done.
So get out there and read it, folks. So, all right. So that was Dust, and wow, we did 2 shows in a week. That's a lot for us,
Well, there's ta-da! Apparently, we're moving out of those winter doldrums, and it's spring. Spring has sprung.
So we got to think of what next to do. Like I said, we got some movies we could definitely. Me and Scott again. We'll talk offline. People review a movie. We recently did a broad topic, mutants, and I'd have to do some thinking for some more broad topics because we've covered a lot of the broad topics. So. I don't know. We'll think of something. I'm leaning towards we'll probably do a movie next because I don't have any books queued up that I finished that would be worth reviewing. So that's the problem with books; they take you time to finish. So movies are easy, or television shows, or whatever the case may be. Like I said, we got a lot of good television coming out. There's a lot of movies out there that are coming out or been out that we could definitely listen to and review. I'm thinking maybe we should do Train to Busan. The more I think about it, it's
we could tell you what, if we do Train to Busan for 30 minutes or 20 minutes and we do Girl with All the Gifts for 20 minutes, we're probably that's probably a whole show. I'm not sure that there's an hour's worth of material in Train to Busan. Or do a short show.
So what? An hour? But
exactly.
No. Trust me. We always say, "Oh, we're not going to talk about it that long." We always fail. So so I'm not worried about doing just a show on Train to Busan because we'll probably talk for 15, 20 minutes prior. and then talk about the movie for a half hour. So that's it. I've decided we are going to do Train to Busan is going to be the next show. So it's decided, folks. Train to Busan will be our next novel. Another train apocalypse movie like Snowpiercer. We never reviewed Snowpiercer, did we?
I don't know. I'm not sure that we did, but I didn't realize that there was the option for train apocalypses.
Well, there is.
And isn't there a Snowpiercer TV series warming up somewhere? I
think it was TNT. We talked about it on a previous podcast. Yes, it's something that's maybe in development.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So yes, there are definitely train apocalypses. For people who like rail games like Ticket to Ride or Eurorails, yes, you also can enjoy train apocalypses by watching Train to Busan or Snowpiercer.
I would give any amount of money to find one of those guys who's like a model train enthusiast who built a apocalyptic train set, where the train just goes through smoldering ruins with mutants and glowing craters, and that
would be, if I was to ever get a train set, that would be the train set, because when I was a kid, I had a train set. I loved it. But for whatever reason, my mother would never let me get a piece of plywood to nail my tracks down to.
Yeah.
Like I always had to improvise putting it up on something, a floor. I always wanted to put it on it, just make it a little piece of wood, and then I could put some green on it, and then I had the little nails to nail the train in just so I could set my train up permanently. I love my train, when I was a kid, but
you should go find that John Oliver piece where he sent a model train set, a completely gigantic and inappropriate model train set to Scranton, Pennsylvania. There's this weird thing where there's this thing about, they discovered that the Scranton weather people, when they do their news, there's this outdoor train set that's running around in the background at their tiny little Scranton, Pennsylvania TV station. And apparently John Oliver's this week tonight or whatever it is, or last week tonight, built this insane huge model train set based on Scranton and sent it to Scranton. And weirdly, Scranton accepted it and put it in the Railroad Museum in Scranton with some really, go look that up on YouTube. It's some of the funniest crap I've ever seen. It proves Scranton has a sense of humor.
That's cool. So if there's anybody who's listens to the show, one of the friends of the Apocalypse, who's a train enthusiast and has built himself a post-apocalyptic train set to run your model trains on when you're wearing your conductor hat, we want to see it. All right, so contact us.
Send pictures of that.
Picture that. Send videos. We want to see it. Or if we've inspired somebody to build it, do it. Send us pictures. So I like that idea. It's really cool. So
it's starting to appeal to you. Well, man,
maybe we'll make that the next contest.
Oh my God!
Build us a post-apocalyptic train set, and you'll win a $2 book.
Yeah, all you have to do is sink $1,500, $2,400 into a train set, and you'll get a signed copy of, signed by us.
Yeah.
A signed copy of somebody else's book. This seems worthwhile.
It sounds like a plan to me. So yeah, but people know, because there were some people who were late to the party about the contest, and we are going to have another contest at some point, folks, because I've already got the book. I should have had it with me. There will be another. I don't know what the contest is going to be, but we're going to do another contest in the near future, and the prize for that one's going to be volume 1 of Jerry Ahern's The Survivalist.
Ooh.
Total War #1. I got a copy of that at the Chamberlain Book Mine, which you and I will be visiting when you come down to Florida. So
nice.
So that's gonna be the next contest. It's gonna be for a copy of Total War by Jerry Ahern, The Survivalist. So we'll think of that. Next show is gonna be Train to Busan. So I'm gonna need to rewatch that to get it fresh in my mind, and we'll do a show probably within the next 2 weeks. We'll get another show. We'll keep on. We'll try to keep this train going, folks.
I see what you did there.
I know. It wasn't that clever. No, I'm not that clever. So anyway, folks, that's our next show. That was Dust again. Highly recommended. Go get it. So we will see you guys again in a week or two. We'll get another show. We're going to do Train to Busan. And hopefully we'll have some more interesting post-apocalyptic news for you, because we got a lot out this show because we didn't say a lot last time. So if we come across some new stuff, we'll guys let you know. And again, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, I believe under the channel somewhere there's a subscribe button. So if you're watching it and you don't subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the channel. You can always feel free to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. But again, I always recommend to just follow us on the blog. podcast@groundzero.com. Real easy to find. I had somebody comment that we should be posting a link to the channel in every single video on the bottom, but you know what? He was a little snarky about it, so I'm not going to say piss off, but you know what? There's a link to the blog on the YouTube channel on the main page, and if you just type in podcast@groundzero in Google, it's the first thing that comes up. So it's not hard to find it. I know this is a lazy, instant gratification society now, to where I need to spoon feed you people and put it right in your face and click it for you.
How are you going to survive the apocalypse if we do everything for you?
I know. So, podcast@groundzero.com. It's real easy to find. So I always recommend going to podcast@groundzero.com, because that is, again, the main hub of everything, because it connects to all the social media. And the YouTube channel connects to everything. You could just go to the right-hand side where there's a subscribe to the newsletter. Basically, you just put your email address in there and hit subscribe. And every time I make a post on the blog, which then goes out to every Twitter and Facebook, it also sends an email to you letting you know, hey, here's another post by podcast@groundzero, and you can see what's going on. That's the easiest way. Or if you like news feeds, RSS feeds or something, just, there's a link to the RSS feed as well. So it's just easier to follow us on the blog, because that tells you when shows are coming up, interesting things are posted. So there you go. So that being said, I will shut up about that. So I am the Apocalypse Nerd. He is Adam Bomb Glancy. We thank you again for joining us, giving us your time this week to listen to us blab on about stuff for almost 2 hours. So, but hey, if you didn't like it, you wouldn't listen. But anyway, folks, thank you. Good night, and we will see you in the wastelands.